She had a dream. Not the vague kind people mention at dinner parties. Not the kind that lives comfortably in the back of your mind and never causes trouble. A real dream. A specific, detailed, completely mapped out dream. She wanted to open a bakery. Not a big one, just a small corner place with mismatched chairs and handwritten menus and bread that made people stop walking and turn around to find out where the smell was coming from. She had the name picked out since she was 26. She had notebooks full of recipes. She had a folder on her laptop with saved photos of the exact kind of tiles she wanted on the floor. She had everything except the belief that someone like her, in a body like hers, had any right to stand behind a counter and ask the world to take her seriously. This is the story of a woman who let a dream wait too long, and then decided it had waited long enough. Diane is 38 years old. She weighs 760 pounds. She has not been inside a professional kitchen in 4 years. Not because she forgot how to cook, because the last kitchen she worked in had a narrow galley layout and a chef who watched her move through it with an expression she has never been able to fully forget. He did not say anything. He did not have to. She handed in her notice that Friday. She told herself she would find something else. She told herself she just needed a break. She told herself a lot of things over the next 4 years while she worked from home doing data entry for a company whose name she barely remembered, and ordered food in quantities that surprised even her sometimes, and watched cooking shows on a laptop balanced on her knees in a bed that had become the center of her universe. She watched those shows the way some people watch home renovation programs, not passively, hungrily. She took notes. She paused and rewound. She whispered adjustments to the screen. Too much butter on that roux. The sugar should go in earlier. That is not how you fold egg whites. She knew things the people on screen did not know. She knew it, and she was watching from a bed she had not left in 3 days. Diane grew up in a kitchen. Her father ran a small catering business out of their house when she was a child. Weekend mornings meant industrial quantities of food being prepared in a kitchen that smelled like onions and cardamom, and something sweet always baking somewhere underneath everything else. She was allowed to help from the time she was 6. Not in a cute way. Not in a here is a spoon and pretend to stir way. Actually help. Measuring, tasting, adjusting. Her father would hold something out to her and ask what it needs, and she would think about it seriously and say, "More acid," and he would nod and add lemon juice, and she would be right. She was almost always right. By the time she was 16, she was running the weekend prep herself while her father handled the clients. By the time she was 20, she was at culinary school on a partial scholarship. By the time she was 24, she was working in a real kitchen for the first time, and it was exactly as hard and exactly as electric as she had imagined, and she went home every night exhausted in a way that felt like a reward. The weight had always been there in some form. She was never small. But in her 20s, the kitchen did not care. The kitchen cared about speed and precision and palate, and whether you could stay calm when 3 things went wrong at once. She was good at all of those things. The weight became a problem later, when the industry started to notice it, when the looks started, when the comments arrived dressed as concern, when she realized that no matter how good her food was, there were people who could not get past what she looked like to taste it. She left the industry at 34. She told people it was burnout. It was not entirely a lie. She was burned, just not by the work. The years away from professional cooking were supposed to be temporary. 6 months to reset. Maybe a year. She would lose some weight, get her confidence back, find a smaller kitchen, start over somewhere that did not know her. That was the plan. The plan did not survive contact with the reality of what happens when the one thing that made you feel capable and alive is suddenly gone, and the only comfort you know how to reach for is food. 340 pounds became 400. 400 became 530. The 6 months became a year, became 2 years, became 4. She stopped returning calls from people in the industry. She stopped going to the farmer's market on Saturdays, even though she had gone every Saturday for 10 years. She stopped cooking for herself. That one hit differently. The woman who could break down a chicken in 40 seconds and make a reduction that tasted like it took 3 days started ordering the same 4 things from the same 2 apps and eating them in the dark in front of a laptop screen. Not because she could not cook, because cooking felt like a reminder of everything she was not doing, and reminders hurt. The turning point came from the least likely direction. It came from a stranger on the internet. She had started a small account, just for herself really, filming herself cooking simple things in her apartment kitchen. No face, just hands and the food and her voice explaining what she was doing and why. She posted the first one at midnight because she could not sleep, and it felt like something to do. She woke up the next morning to 400 comments. Not cruel ones, not the kind she had been bracing for her whole life. Comments from people who said they had never understood why their sauce always broke until she explained it in 30 seconds. Comments from people who said her voice was the most calming thing they had heard all week. Comments from people who said, "Please make more." She lay in bed reading them for 2 hours. She made another video that afternoon, and another the next day. 3 months later, she had 40,000 followers. 6 months later, she had 120,000. People were making her recipes. People were sending her photographs of dishes they had never attempted before because she made it sound possible. People were writing to her from different countries to say that her chicken stock tutorial had changed their relationship with their own kitchen. She was reaching people from a bed she could barely get out of. And slowly, quietly, something that had gone dark inside her began to turn back on. The first message from the investors came 8 months after she posted her first video. A small food brand. They wanted to work with her. She almost did not reply. She wrote the reply, deleted it, wrote it again, deleted it again. Then she called her oldest friend B. B, who had known her since culinary school. B, who had watched her walk away from the industry and never once said, "I told you so." B, who picked up the phone and said, "I have been waiting for this call." Diane said, "I am scared." B said, "I know." Diane said, "I do not look like someone people want representing their brand." B was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You look like someone who knows more about food than anyone I have ever met. And I have met a lot of people who know about food." Diane said, "What if they see me in person and change their minds?" B said, "Then they are not the right people, and you move to the next ones." Diane replied to the email the next morning, but she knew. She knew that something had to change. Not for the brand, not for the followers, not for anyone outside of herself. She knew because she had a video call with the brand team and had to stop twice because she could not breathe properly during the conversation. She knew because there was a product launch event they wanted her to attend, and she looked at the venue photos and felt the familiar calculation begin. The doors, the chairs, the distance from the parking. She knew because she had spent 8 months rediscovering what she was capable of from the inside of a room she could not always leave. And she wanted to be capable of more. She called a bariatric specialist. She called a therapist who specialized in disordered relationships with food in people who worked in the food industry. She called B and told her what she was doing, and B said, "Good." And they talked for 2 hours about nothing in particular, and it was exactly what she needed. The work was slow. Everything about it was slow. The physical part was slow because her body had been asked to do very little for 4 years, and it approached new demands with extreme caution. The emotional part was slower because unpicking 4 years of shame about food from someone whose identity and livelihood and deepest joy was built around food required the kind of careful work that cannot be rushed. Her therapist's name was Dr. Kamara. Dr. Kamara asked her once in their 3rd session what cooking felt like before it became complicated. Diane thought about it for a long time. Then she said, "It felt like being exactly the right size." Dr. Kamara wrote that down. Diane thought about that answer for weeks afterward. Exactly the right size. Not thin, not small, not invisible. Just right. And for the first time in years, she began to believe that maybe she could become that again. Just right, just herself, just completely in the right place doing the right thing. She wanted to feel that again. She was going to feel that again. She started cooking properly again 6 months into her recovery work. Not for the camera at first, just for herself. She stood at her kitchen counter for the first time in years and made a proper stock from scratch. 4 hours of simmering. The apartment filling with that smell she had grown up inside of. Onion and bay and the deep mineral quiet of bones doing their slow work in hot water. She stood at the stove and tasted it at every stage, and made adjustments and tasted again, and when it was finished, she stood there with a spoon in her hand and the steam rising around her face, and she cried. Not from sadness, from recognition. There she was. She had not gone anywhere. She had just been waiting. The collaboration with the brand led to 3 more collaborations. The account kept growing. And quietly, in the background of all of it, a plan began to take shape again. Not the grand plan of her 20s, a more honest plan, a more patient one. A small commercial kitchen space available for rent 2 days a week. A limited run of products, her sauces, her spice blends, the things people kept asking if they could buy. A name she had kept in a notebook for 12 years. She applied for a small business loan on a Thursday morning. She wore a green dress. She sat across from a woman at a bank and she spoke about her business plan for 45 minutes with the same precision and confidence she used to use when she was running weekend prep at 16. The loan officer asked her how long she had been planning this. Diane said about 12 years. The loan officer smiled and said it shows. The kitchen opened on a Saturday in September. Not a big opening, not a ceremony. Just Diane and Bea and 2 other women she had hired, standing in a rented commercial kitchen at 6 in the morning with their aprons on, and the ovens heating up and everything smelling exactly the way it was supposed to smell. Diane stood at the center counter. She placed both hands flat on the stainless steel surface. She looked around at the space, the equipment, the light, the particular morning quiet of a kitchen before service begins. She thought about the chef with the expression she had never forgotten. She thought about the narrow galley and the Friday she handed in her notice. She thought about 4 years of cooking shows watched from a bed. She thought about 40,000 comments from strangers who asked for more. And then she stopped thinking about all of it. Because there was work to do. She called out the first item on the prep list. Her team responded. The kitchen came alive. She has lost 140 pounds. She is not finished. She moves differently now than she did 2 years ago. Not easily, not without effort, but with intention. With the specific, purposeful movement of someone who knows where they are going and has decided that getting there is worth whatever it costs. The bakery is not open yet. That is still coming. She has the name. She has the notebooks. She has the folder of tile photos that she added to just last month. It is coming. For now, there is the kitchen, the products, the account that has grown to 400,000 people who tune in to watch her hands work and hear her voice explain why the thing they have been doing wrong is actually a very reasonable mistake, and here is how to fix it. She stands in front of the camera now. Not just the hands, her face, her full self, taking up the whole frame. Not because she has become something different, because she remembered who she already was. A woman who knows things. A woman who built something from the floor of her worst years. A woman whose dream had the patience to wait for her, because it knew she was worth waiting for. The tiles she chose for the bakery floor are terracotta, small, handmade, slightly uneven, the kind that look like they have always been there, the kind that look like they belong. She ordered them last week. They are sitting in a storage unit 2 miles from a corner space she has been looking at for 3 months. The sign above the door will say exactly what she decided it would say 12 years ago. She is not rushing. She has learned that the best things take exactly as long as they take, and that the waiting is not wasted time. It is just more preparation.